Good afternoon, and thanks a lot for joining me today. I'm excited to talk about our project, and I want to give you a quick update on the Kwanefeld Rare Earth project in Greenland, but also talk about our latest acquisition in Spain, which is very interesting, and kind of give you an idea of why I believe we've got a bright future as a company. Greenland, as many of you know, has been on the US radar for decades. In 1949, Harry Truman kind of offered $100 million to Denmark to buy it, and they refused. In 2019, Trump again revisited the argument, and that was rejected again. And now, under Trump's new administration, Greenland, but also rare earth, they've become a hot topic again, right? Earlier this year, the Republican lawmakers introduced a Make Greenland Great Again Act to explore purchasing Greenland from Denmark. And at the same time, some of you may have seen in the news, but the US government has now started taking stakes into companies. Recently, they invested $400 million in MP Materials, right? Yesterday, there was an announcement of a collaboration between Orion Resources and the US-funded Development Finance Corporation to set up a $5 billion critical metals fund dedicated to supporting and financing critical metals projects globally. So it's become very clear that the US is focused on addressing two major concerns, right? The first one is China's dominance in the supply chain and processing of critical minerals. And the second one is potential deficits that are going to surge in the long term, and that's due to the lack of investment in new projects, the lack of new discoveries, declining ore grades, and also very lengthy permitting processes, certainly in the West. On top of that, I think it's fair to say that the US has a strategic interest in Greenland that stems from national security concerns, right? So the confluence of all these factors make our Kwanefeld Rare Earth project valuable, and it's a key piece of a puzzle that Denmark and Greenland are trying to solve. Let's talk about Kwanefeld itself, because that's the cornerstone of our company. It's one of the world's most significant undeveloped rare earth deposit. It's got over 1 billion tons of resources at 1.1% total rare earth oxide. It's located in the southern part of Greenland, and our license was originally granted in 2007. Exploration activities started about 3 years later. They were conducted over the better part of a decade. They yielded more than 80,000 meters of drill core, and our investment exceeds $100 million equivalent, and that only covers about 20% of the license area. In 2012, there was a JORC report that delineated a significant amount of reserves. Because it's expired, we're in the process of updating this report. From 2015 and 2019, environmental impact assessment studies was conducted, and the EIA and the SIA were approved for public consultation in 2020. So over a great period, more than 10 years, the company cooperated closely with the Greenlandic government or the various Greenlandic administrations. And in 2021, the Uranium Act was introduced in December, and that coincides with my entry into the company. The Uranium Act, or it's also called Act 20, essentially stipulates that any deposit that contains more than 100 parts per million of uranium cannot be exploited, and the definition of exploitation under this act is wide-ranging. So, that kind of put us in a position where we basically had to activate the dispute resolution mechanism. But again, when you look at the position of our project in Narsak right there, you can see that it's uniquely positioned because you've got year-round shipping access. You're kind of in the middle between Europe and the United States that are, great markets. And it's basically one of the few rare earth deposits outside of China that can really tilt the balance from the supply chain perspective, right? And look, despite all the setbacks due to the passing of the Uranium Act, which led to the government rejecting our mining license, we remain firm in our position that we have a legal right to develop this deposit. So we are actively fighting for our right to develop Kwanjefeld. In 2023, we initiated arbitration proceedings in Copenhagen against the governments of Denmark and Greenland, as was stipulated in the terms of our license. The statement of claim is available if any of you want to do a deep dive, but essentially it's a classic case of expropriation by introducing a new law with a retroactive effect on a project that had fulfilled every single regulatory requirement needed for a mining license under the Greenlandic law and under the Minerals Resources Act of Greenland. So we're pretty upset about that. There's a Canadian international arbitration and expert witness firm called Secretariat, right, which has valued our project at more than $7.5 billion, and that forms part of our statement of claim. In 2024, we filed additional lawsuits in Greenland and also in Danish courts in order to further protect our interests. And the arbitration tribunal has since ordered a bifurcation process. So what that means is that the jurisdictional issues will be determined first before the core dispute is addressed, and we're expecting a decision on jurisdiction sometime between now and the month of October. Now, as this case progresses, the Greenlandic government is going to be forced to either, if we win, right, to either grant us our exploitation license or compensate us for the project's loss, right? And we think that that will be a major turning point for our valuation, right? We are backed by Burford Capital, which is the highest standard in terms of litigation finance, and it's the world's largest provider of commercial legal finance. They have a 93% track record in deploying funds into winning cases. So that's where we are with respect to the Kwanjefeld projects. It's still work in progress. This will take time. The Greenlandic government has deliberately taken the steps to slow the process down. All what we want is for our case to be heard in a court of law, whether it is Greenland, Denmark, arbitral tribunal in Copenhagen. This is what we want because our case is very clear-cut. Right now, moving on to Penuta. So Penuta is a small village in the northwest part of Spain, near the border with Portugal. Spain is composed of autonomous regions. The region where Penuta is located is called Galicia, right? We think this acquisition is smart and is strategic at the same time. It's smart because we've paid cents on the dollars for an asset that was in production as recently as 2024, right? We acquired it at a cost that is well below the historical investment of 50 million Australian dollars. It includes processing infrastructure that is in very good condition, nearly new, right? The asset has 2 permits. One that is for tailings, because this is a historical tin mine, and there's several million tons of tailings sitting on the site. And that permit is in good standing. The other permit is for the mother deposit. That's a mining permit, and that will require a new environmental report, and this is going to take us 9 to 12 months to reobtain. The asset has an NI 43101 resource report that was conducted by SRK with 76 million tons of tin. Granted, it's low grade, but more importantly, it has produced tantalum. And tantalum is critical to the manufacturing of transistors, capacitors. It's key for the semiconductor industry, right? So this is an asset that has an established infrastructure. It's got processing facilities, site access, utilities, and that's going to reduce our upfront capital expenditure and shorten our time to production. And very importantly, it's the only tantalum producing asset in Europe. It's well aligned with the EU Critical Raw Materials Act, and we intend to get it included in the list of EU strategic projects. What's really key here is that it is conflict-free, and that makes it very attractive to international buyers, right? The tantalum supply chain, on top of that, is better distributed than, let's say, the rare earth supply chain, because the concentrate can be sold in Europe, in the United States, in Canada, in Australia, in Asia, of course, Korea, China, Taiwan, right? Tantalum is essential for high-performance electronics, right? Aerospace components. But more than generally, it is sourced from conflict areas, right? Tantalum forms part of a metals complex which is called by traders the 3 Ts: tin, tantalum, and tungsten. Okay, and more often than not, it is sourced in the eastern part of Congo, where there's been constant civil war and warring factions for the past 20 years. Parts of Rwanda. Australia is also a small producer of tantalum. So what is interesting about this is that Penuta will represent one of the few sources of tantalum in Europe that is fully traceable, it's transparent, and that's going to establish the foundation for an ethically compliant supply chain. So the acquisition still needs to be ratified by a Spanish local court, as we acquired it as part of a bankruptcy process, and it is also subject to foreign direct investment authorization by the Spanish government. But this acquisition puts us in a position where we will be able to generate cash flows in the medium term while we continue working in Greenland. Let's talk about our company in general, right? So capital structure, we've got 1.78 billion shares on issue. Our market capitalization, the recent one, is 120 million Australian dollars. We've also got a strong position with $34 million in the bank, and we've got no debt. We recently made a private placement to OCJ Pty Ltd, and as part of that, OCJ has become our largest minority shareholder with about 17%. Shenge Resources, that up until then was our largest minority shareholder, is now our second with around 7.5%. We've also strengthened our team, and we will continue to do that. We strongly believe in having the right team to navigate a very challenging position for our situation for our company, right? And so it's not just about having the right technical team, but also a team and a board of directors that can help us navigate all the legal, financial, and political challenges that we are facing as a company. And so we believe that our team is built for that challenge ahead. In terms of key upcoming dates, we are eagerly waiting for an arbitral decision on the jurisdiction of where our case is going to be heard. I personally think that there's a high probability that we start in Greenland, which is fine. Any case that is appealed in Greenland eventually ends up back in Denmark, the Danish Supreme Court in any case, and we have a very, very strong confidence in the Danish legal system. We also will be focusing on the transfer of the Penuta asset to ETM, so we need to go through the regulatory processes that are relevant. There's a pending FDI approval. We'll be focusing on getting the restart of the tailings mining section B of Penuta, and we'll kick off the environmental study for the section C, so the mining license for the main deposit. We also expect, once we have clarity on the jurisdiction of where our case is going to be heard, we'll have a date for the first hearing, potentially before the end of the year, but that could spill over into Q1 next year. And at the end of this year, our exploration license needs to be renewed. It's been renewed ever since we started in 2007. That license is renewable every 3 years. We don't expect any particular hiccup, but time will tell. Now, each of these milestones, I think, represents a potential inflection point for our share price, either up or down, right? What I'd like to say as conclusion is that we're kind of in a unique position, right? We're a bit of a strange animal. I would say that as far as the ASX is concerned, we're probably one of the stocks that has the most asymmetric risk-adjusted return profile, right? With a lot of optionality. Once, if and when the Greenlandic situation gets resolved. And we combine that entire group of elements where you have critical metals that are combined with all of the geopolitical challenges and situation, and basically the big blocks that are focused on regaining and reestablishing a leadership position in terms of supply chain for critical materials. So I think from a stock perspective, this is what we represent. We're not a sure play, right? We're not cash flow producing, but we've got a strong position, and we've got an attractive risk-adjusted return profile. So that makes us a strategic player in the energy transition. I thank you for taking the time to listening to me, and I'd be very happy to answer any questions at the booth or later on at drinks if you guys want. Thank you.